one of the saddest incidents that we have in Shas is that story that most of you certainly know, and that's the story that begins Akamtza Bar Kamtza Charav Yerushalayim. Because of that incident at that party, everybody knows the story. The host loved Kamtza, he couldn't stand Bar Kamtza, and by mistake Bar Kamtza came. And the host wanted to throw him out. And it was very, very embarrassing what was going on. And Chazal tell us that there were Talmidei Chachamim there. And they should have stepped up and they should have said, you cannot embarrass a person like this. But they didn't. And the Gemara, if you look now in Gittin, Nun Heyam and Beis, the Gemara has an introduction to that story. And the introduction is so important to every single aspect of our lives. And the Gemara quotes a pasuk in Mishlei, Kavches pasuk Yudalid. Ashrei Adam Mafachai Tamid. Ashrei Adam Mafachai Tamid means a person is fortunate if he's always concerned what the future will bring. Rashi says, Doyeg Lirois Hanoilad, he's concerned to see what is going to be the fruits of his actions or inactions. Shalei Tera Takola Bakach Im Esazois, that consequences, evil things should not happen if he doesn't act appropriately. Every person must think, what are you saying? What are you doing? What are you not doing? And that's what happened by Kamtza by Kamtza. Yerushalayim was destroyed, the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. Why? Because there were people who should have done things and they should have planned ahead and should have acted in certain ways and they didn't. And that's what we're coming to talk about today. About having foresight and insight about difficult topics. No one wants to talk about death and no one wants to talk about a life-threatening illness. I'll tell you an interesting story. I had a friend who was a life insurance broker. He was tremendous in this thing. He was on the $1 Million Round Table every single year. $1 Million Round Table, for those of you who are not familiar, it doesn't mean that he made $1 million every year, but he sold $1 million worth of insurance every single year. He was a personal friend of mine. That's where I had my life insurance from. And I recommended him to my brother-in-law. He comes to my brother-in-law's house, and my brother-in-law felt, if I recommended him, he's probably a very nice guy. They sat down at the table, and the first word the life insurance guy said to him, suppose you die. My brother-in-law was so offended. He said, what do you mean, suppose I die? Suppose you die. And he threw him out of the house. He did not buy a nickel of insurance from him. What do you mean, suppose I die? Suppose you die. It was so frightening to me because, I didn't think that that's how life insurance salesmen get their point across, but he was on the $1 Million Round Table. But the point is, because we have to talk about these topics, I would like to rephrase it as Rabbi Zone did. Today we're going to talk about healthcare. Today we're going to talk about guidance. And we're going to talk about transition of resources from generation to generation. Now, doesn't that sound nice? Value of life, healthcare, transition of resources from generation to generation. What's kein schlecht? So nice. We can all talk about it. And what Rabbi Zone mentioned is on his wonderful website, the NASC website. And in there, and I want to quote, he says that the Torah world's view of life is that every moment of life has infinite value. That's the Torah's view of life. Every moment of life has infinite value. However, the medical world's view of life is not that. It's judged by what is the quality of life. If somebody can lead a productive life, if somebody is not in excruciating pain, they consider that quality of life, so then we'll prolong life. But if Chas v'Shalom, there's no quality of life, that's where there's a terrible conflict between the Torah view of life, our view of life, and the medical view of life. And I want to tell you something. I want to tell you a very personal story. What life means at the last moments of life. Now, all of you who know me personally know that my father passed away when I was 21. My mother was the quintessential almana for 40 long years. She never got over the passing of my father, never. There was always that element of sadness in her life. No matter what simcha, she missed my father terribly. And those of you who know my wife know that she's a wonderful person. The furthest that I ever lived from my mother was 2 blocks away. My wife became my mother's best friend. And there was nothing that my mother and I couldn't and didn't talk about. This past year, mamish this past year, before Pesach, my nephew, Hudi Gutman, Rabbi Gutman from Lakewood, he teaches in the Edison Yeshiva, he calls me up, he says, Uncle Pesach, I want to tell you a story that happened with your mother the last day of her life. I said, Hudi, that's ridiculous. I know everything about my mother. He said, no, you don't know this. I never told you this. I said, so why didn't you tell it to me, whatever it is? He said, because I'll tell you the truth, I didn't understand why she did what she did. But I'm telling you, this will change your attitude, as you will see in a second. It was the last day of her life, which was the second day of Sukkot. She was in Paul Kimball Hospital in Lakewood, and being that Hudi lives in Lakewood, he volunteered to be with my mother for those days of Yontif. She wasn't responding anymore. She wasn't talking, and he felt that she was totally out of it, but still, she was alive. And so he went over to her that second morning of Sukkot, because she passed away that night at the beginning of Chol Hamoed, and he said to her, Bubby, would you like to do the mitzvah of Lulav and Esrig? I have a Lulav and Esrig. Let's make the bracha, and we'll shake the Lulav and Esrig together. She didn't say anything. He put the Lulav and Esrig in her hands, he wrapped her fingers around it, and he wrapped his fingers around her fingers. And he said the bracha, and they shook the Lulav to all sides. After he finished, he said to her, okay, Bubby, let me have the Lulav and Esrig. We said the bracha. He wasn't sure. Didn't look like she said the bracha. Didn't look like she knew what was going on. But she held on to it tight. She wouldn't give it to him. He said, Bubby, we did the mitzvah. And she held on to it tight. So he saw that if she wants to hold on to it tight, he's going to let her hold on to it. She holds on to it. And as soon as she has it herself, she takes it to her lips, the lulav and the esrog, she kisses it, kisses the lulav, kisses the esrog, and she gives it back to him. And he said to me, I never understood why she did that. Obviously, she knew what was going on. Obviously, she knew that this was a chayfet shel mitzvah because she kissed it. He said, for years, I never told you about this because I didn't understand it. He said, this year, I learned the Ber Heitev, and you must look it up in Siman Tov, Ayin Zayin, Sivkot and Aleph, and Hilchas Afikomen. Listen to this. Kosav Shlo HaKodesh. The Shlo HaKodesh writes, Ra'isi mibnei Aliyah. I saw the Hechera mention the higher people. Shahayu menashkin hamatzos. They used to kiss the matzahs v'hamorar by the Seder. This is the first year in my life I ever kissed a matzah. Me and all my children and grandchildren, we all kissed matzahs. I can't say I kissed the morar. But v'chein sukkah. V'chein sukkah b'chnisosai u'b'yitziosai. The sukkah you're supposed to kiss when you walk in and walk out, just like we kiss a mezuzah. That's what the Ber Heitev says. V'chein daled minim shebalulav. You're supposed to kiss the daled minim after you finish using them. I always did it. I did it because my mother did it. I never knew why she did it. And listen to what the Ber Heitev says in the name of the Shlo. V'hakoil l'chavoy v'hamitzvah. To show your love for the mitzvah. V'ashrei. Fortunate. Amisha oived Hashem b'simcha. Those who serve Hashem b'simcha. Could you imagine? The last day of my mother's life, she taught not only me, because I heard of it from Hudi Gutman, but my children and grandchildren and thousands who have heard this story. When people thought she was out of it, when probably doctors would say, what's the point of preserving life? What could she do already? And look what she did. This was her natural way of making a sign of love for a mitzvah. That's what Nask is talking about. That's what Rabbi Zone was talking about. The value of life does not stop till the last second. And my mother, she should have a lichtika Gan Eden. That's what she taught our family and forever about the love of a mitzvah. So how could you take away life prematurely when life is so precious? I want to give you an attitude that you will not believe on illness. I have a very close friend. His name is Rab Simcha Lefkowitz. Rab Simcha Lefkowitz and I grew up in Kew Gardens. I was his pircha leader. He became a tremendous Talmud Chacham in Lakewood. He was out in Los Angeles, and he moved back, and he was the Rav, and he is the Rav in South Shore. Rahman al-Itzlan, about 12 years ago, he had a terrible, terrible stroke. He was only 52 years old. His body completely shut down, like a quadriplegic. He couldn't move, he couldn't talk. Nobody could understand this was such a severe stroke. He's a young man, he's only 52. And People gave up. I remember I saw him in the hospital, Erev Yontif. I thought that was the last time I was going to see him. But somehow, after weeks, and doctors didn't know where this came from or what to do for him, slowly but surely, his mind came back, his talking came back, but not his walking. He was not able to walk by himself. He always had to use a walker. And today, Nebuch is in a wheelchair. But recently, I had him speak at an Arachim convention on Shabbos. Arachim is a wonderful Kiruv organization. And he spoke Shalashudis. And he told over this story. He said, when he realized, of course, that he's going to be in a wheelchair and he can't really walk on his own, so Rab Nachum Dessler, the son of Rabbi Yoda, so Rab Nachum Dessler from Cleveland called him. And he told him, I want to tell you a pshat that I once heard in the name of the Chofetz Chaim. You will never say this bracha, Birchas HaShachar, the same after this. He said, the Chofetz Chaim said, every morning we make a bracha, HaMeichin Mitzadei Gover. Hashem, we bless you because you established the steps of man. The simple meaning is that Hashem gives us the capacity to walk. HaMeichin Mitzadei Gover. Zok the Chofetz Chaim. When a person is born, Hashem determines how many steps he's going to make. And once he or she finishes those steps, life is over. But what happens if Hashem loves this person? And Hashem wants to keep this person alive. You know what he does? He makes it that they can't walk anymore. That they're slowed down. They're in a wheelchair. You know why? So like this, they can prolong life. They're not going to finish their steps. Said Simcha Lefkowitz. When he first had the stroke, he was so despondent. But now he realizes in the last 12 years, he has seen the bar mitzvah of 6 grandchildren. He has had more than 10 grandchildren and celebrated so many chasanas in the family. The greatest thing that ever happened to him was that Hashem slowed him down. What a perspective. What a perspective. I remember Rab Nosson Meltzer, our mutual friend. He was sitting Shiva. And he was sitting Shiva for his 90-year-old mother, him and his sister. And then I don't know how we came up to talk about this. And Nosson started crying. He said, Paysach, he said, I can't believe it. For the last 12 years, my mother's been in a wheelchair. I always wondered, why did Hashem put her in the wheelchair? And now I understand. He gave her 12 more years of life. Because otherwise she would have finished her steps. What an insight into illness. HaMeichin Mitzadei Gover. Should I show you what it means prolonging life? This lady, a young woman in her early 40s, had a husband who was so sick that the doctors felt that they just can't make an operation because he'll die on the table. So she said, but you got to save my husband. He said, I can't do it. I'm afraid. He said, if you get a higher authority, then I'll do the operation. So her husband had learned in Tiferes Yerushalayim 20 years before. So she decides the highest authority is Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. The doctor calls her the next day. He says to her, did you decide which authority, like which doctor you're going to go to? She says, I'll tell you the truth. I decided on a higher authority, but it's not a doctor. It's a rabbi. He says, I don't believe it. You got to be kidding. A rabbi's going to tell me whether I should operate? He says, can I go with you? Because I can't believe this. I can't believe a rabbi's going to make such a decision. She says, I'm going tomorrow with my father. You could come along. The next day they go to FDR Drive, the doctor, the young wife, who's a mother of children, and her father. And they come in, and Rav Moshe is so machabed, the doctor, and he asks him all the questions about the illness. And he's talking to the wife about her husband, and he says, I'm trying to remember who your husband was. You told me that he learned in Tiferes Yerushalayim 20 years ago. By any chance, do you have a picture of him, of what he looked like in those days? She said, Rosh Hashiva, it just happens that I have a picture of what he looked like in those days. He said, let me see it. Rav Moshe takes a look at the picture, and he starts crying. Because he remembered the kid in Tiferes Yerushalayim. And Rav Moshe's crying, because this is a boy that he remembers. And when Rav Moshe started crying, the doctor turns to the wife, and he says, now I understand why this rabbi can make a decision. Any rabbi who could cry for a student that he had 20 years ago, God's going to give him the right perspective. And listen to what Rav Moshe said. We should all learn from it. Rav Moshe said that they should do the operation, but the husband should be makabel something upon himself. And that is that he should make brachas out loud. Why? So people should say amen. And that others should say brachas out loud, so he should say amen. Why? You would think a Hasidic Rebbe is talking. He said, because Amen, Aleph Mem Nun is B'Gematria 91. And the word Malach, Mem Lamed Aleph Chof is also equal 91. Every time you say Amen, you create a Malach, and these Malachim will protect him. And sure enough, he was makabel. and he lived another 6 years. That's prolonging life. The doctor's ready to give up. I can't do anything because, the guy will die on the table. But the Torah perspective is say brachas out loud. You never know. That's what Rabbi Moshe is telling us. That's my 91. It's not a bad idea for every single one of us in this Heilige conference this morning that we should undertake. And so anybody who's listening to this, why not? We want to prolong life. We want Malachim to protect us. That's what prolonging life is all about. So I want to share with you a medrash. The medrash tells us in Bereshis Rabbah Samachay Tes, Yaakov Tova Es Achoili. Yaakov asked Hashem, please, make a person sick before they die. It used to be that somebody just sneezed. You know that? That's why we say Tzugazund. Because it used to be somebody sneezed, and that's how they died. Now, I don't know why. I don't even know why I'm telling you this, but because we spoke about my mother. My mother, when somebody sneezed, she used to pull my ear. I still pull my ear. I don't know why. I don't know. And I tell you the truth, I once heard, who's that? Jane Brody. She writes in the Science Times. She said that her mother also did the same thing. So I don't know. My mother told me, I don't know where she got it from, that there's a medrash in the Shema leaves through the years, so you pull it down so it shouldn't be able to go out because people died. I don't know if it's true. If you find the medrash, let me know. But anyway, but the point is, Yaakov Avinu Tova Es Achoili. He said, Hashem, please make it that people should be sick before they die. Why? Because listen what the Medrash says. Adam meis bilti choili. If a person dies without being sick, ein miyashav ben bonav. He's not settling his matters with his children. If he's sick 2 or 3 days, hu miyashav ben bonav. He's going to be able to settle. He'll be able to resolve. He can determine what should happen with his possessions, what should happen with his finances. And the Medrash again tells us, Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said to Yaakov Avinu, Chayecha, I swear, Dava Toiv Tova, you said a good thing, and I'm going to start with you. That's why the first one that it says in the Torah that was sick was Yaakov. It says, Vayemel Yosef, they said to Yosef, Hinei Avicha Choila, your father is sick. So sickness, especially when it's going to lead to death, is a wonderful thing because it gives time for people to plan. And that's what each one of us must plan. And we must plan this before we get sick. Rahman al-Islam, if somebody is sick and taken to a hospital, especially after an accident, who's going to make the decision? The doctors. You don't want that. You want a Rav to make the decisions whether the doctor should do something or not. You want your family member. Every parent has a child that they feel that child is responsible. But if you don't write it down on one of these cards that Rabbi Zon will give you after this, what's going to happen? Somebody comes to the hospital and the doctor say, well, we're going to do whatever we think we have to do because there's nobody that's been assigned. One of the most important things, that's called a living will. That's a will while you're still alive. We're not talking only about wills after death. We're talking, Chas v'shalom, you want somebody, you want to get the best care. I remember my mother telling me, she said to me, Paysach, you're the only one that I want should make the decision. Of all the kids, I trust you. You're the one that should make the decisions. And I want to live as long as I can. And I said, Mom, but what if I have to ask a Rav Shaila? She said, you go to Rabbi David Cohen. She knew that. That's my Rebbe. So there's no question. I wrote it down and I told all my brothers and sisters, it's not a pleasant thing to talk about. But Chas v'shalom, if something happens, it's 10 times worse if you don't have anybody to talk about it. So that's part of something that every one of you must do today. Because you know something? I once heard a great expression. I remember I was traveling to Torah Das by train when I was a kid. I saw a great advertisement. To the other guy, you're the other guy. That's great. You know what that means? The other guy dies. The other guy gets sick. Yeah, but to the other guy, you're the other guy. You know, nobody thinks, I'm not getting sick. I'm not dying. You know, Moshe Rabbeinu lived to 120, but I'm going, till 800. Today's my English birthday, by the way, right? So, thank you. But anyway, but the point is, so a person doesn't think along those things. But to the other guy, you're the other guy. So you better sign. You better write down for your own benefit. And the best time to do it is when you're healthy, because you don't believe it's going to happen anyway. There's a wonderful video the Chaim Aruchim organization made it. Rabbi Zon knows them very well. You have to take a look at that video. They spell Chaim, C-H-A-Y-I-M, Aruchim video. It's heartbreaking. Rivi Schwabel tells that he had to beg the doctors to save his father's life. Because they said he's not living a life of quality. So therefore, let him go. We have different perspectives, and we can make sure things happen, but we have to plan in advance. That's the pasuk, Ashri Adam Mefachad Tamid. Where do you want to be buried? Nobody wants to talk about that. You want to be buried in Eretz Yisrael? A lot of people are not buried in Eretz Yisrael. Many of you know, and I wish we could all go on this tour, which is along the Jackie Robinson Oliver Shalom Highway, right around here. You don't have to go to Poland. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky is there. Rav Palm is there. Rabbeinu Yaakov Yosef is there. The Chavetz Chaim's second wife is there. Rav Henoch Leibowitz is there. Do I have to tell you what Ness happened a few weeks ago? It's not for now. By the cave of Rav Henoch Leibowitz, the whole world knows about it. Yeah, but some people want to be buried in Eretz Yisrael, some don't. And even in Eretz Yisrael, a young couple came to me, not so young actually, and they wanted to be buried in Har Menachos, but they can't afford it. So they called me and they said, should we borrow money? Should I get an extra job so I could be buried in Har Menachos? Or any place in Eretz Yisrael is okay. That's a good shaila. But they want to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. But some people don't want to. Rabbi Yaakov, do I understand, made a promise to his first wife that he's going to be buried next to her. She's right behind him. Go to the cave here, you'll see, in Mount Judah. Some people don't want to be buried in Eretz Yisrael because they want the kids to be able to come to daven by Kivrei Avos. But that's something you got to talk about now. While you think it's never going to happen. These are things that, Rabbi Zone, that's the whole purpose of getting together today. Baruch Hashem, we're all healthy, we're all well, and we don't believe it's going to happen to us. And now that's the time to make those kind of decisions. I'll tell you one of the greatest stories about burial. You will not believe this story. I had the great zchus to know Rab Simcha Wasserman, Zecher Tzaddik Levracha. This is Rabbi Chonen's son. He lived in Kew Gardens for a while. Some of you remember Dov Ro, one of the tzaddikim of our generation. So Dov Ro took him from the nursing home, and he lived by Dov. If you remember, we used to go visit him. And Rab Simcha then moved to Eretz Yisrael, and he lived in Mattersdorf. And he opened Oral Chonon together with my dear friend Rav Moshe Mordechai Chodesh Nebuch, who just passed away this past year. But there was a famous person, Shlomo Lawrence, who was in the Knesset in Eretz Yisrael, for Agudas Yisrael. And he had already retired, but he also lived in the Mattersdorf area, not far from there. And he had a chavrusa, Rabbi Simcha Wasserman. Every night they used to learn. I remember I come into Rabbi Simcha's house in Mattersdorf on Pona Me'iros, and he was learning with Shlomo Lawrence. Rachmana Litzlan, Rabbi Simcha and his wife Fegi, they never had any children. So when Rabbi Simcha passed away, he passed away on Beis Cheshvan. So after he was buried, Rabbi Shlomo Lawrence said to his children, he was buried in Har Menachos, that he wants to change his Mokem Kvura. He had bought a plot in Har Hazeisim. He said, I want to be next to Rabbi Shlomo Lawrence, next to Rabbi Simcha Wasserman. So he said, but the whole family is in Har Hazeisim. We have plots there. He said, yeah, but who's going to go daven by Rabbi Simcha Wasserman? He had no children. If people know that I was his chavrusa and I'm going to be buried next to him, when they daven by me, they'll daven by my chavrusa next to, and nothing that the family could say would change his mind. And he bought a plot right next to Rab Simcha Wasserman. Rab Simcha, by the way, his wife was so loyal to him, and he was loyal to her, she was loyal to him. I'll never forget, Rav Moshe Mordechai Chodesh told me one of the most moving statements ever. She said, he told me that Rebbetzin Wasserman once said to him, she said, I feel so close to Rab Simcha. I know that we both have to die. I just hope that I die first, she said, because I can't live one day without my Rab Simcha. That's what she said. And a few weeks later, she met Rav Moshe Chodesh, and she said, I changed my mind. I hope that we both live forever, but if we have to die, I hope Rab Simcha dies first, because I'm the only one that could sit Shiva for him. I'm the only one who could give him the Kovod Achron. You could cry from that. So listen to this. Rab Simcha was nifter on Beis Cheshvan, and his wife sat Shiva, and 3 days after the Shiva, she died. And they're buried next to each other in Har Menachos. But listen to this. 17 years later, B'Gematria Toiv, Rab Shlomo Lawrence was nifter. You know what day he was nifter? Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan. Rosh Chodesh, nobody goes to the Beis Olam. You don't go on Rosh Chodesh. So when do you go? Beis Cheshvan, the yahrzeit of Rab Simcha. Imagine the whole family of Rab Shlomo Lawrence that are going. That's what he wanted. He wanted that people should daven by Rab Simcha. So the Eibishter made it that he died on Rosh Chodesh. Nobody goes to the kibbutz, then they go Beis Cheshvan. So everybody's davening. So last time I was in Eretz Yisrael with my children, I took them all to Har Menachos. Here's Rab Simcha, here's the Rebbetzin, and right there is Rab Shlomo Lawrence. Just incredible. But these things happen only when you plan them. If you're just waiting for something to happen, you think, everybody's, it's going to work out. It doesn't happen that way, unfortunately. We all know in the Torah, in Perek Chav Zayin, in Bamidbar, the very moving story of the Bnei Tzlofchad. Tzlofchad had 5 daughters, and if they would have had a brother, of course, the whole story wouldn't have happened. But Nebuch, there was no sons, and they wanted to inherit Eretz Yisrael. The Gemara in Bava Basra tells us they were tzidkaniyasin. They loved Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemara in Bava Basra tells us, Kuf Yutes Amud Aleph, Yodeya Haya Moshe Rabbeinu Shebnei Tzlofchad Yorshos. He knew very well that they're supposed to get a chelik. If there's only daughters, they inherit. Aval Zeh Lo Hayoteh. This is what he didn't know. Listen to this. Im Noit Leis Chelik B'chayra Oiloi. When you got 5 daughters, is the oldest considered a b'chayra that she gets 2 shares? V'ruya Haya Parshas Nachlos Lichlev Le'ayidei Moshe. Really, it should have been written according that Moshe Rabbeinu brought out to say the halachas of Yerusha and the Torah. Ela shezochu b'nei Tzlofchad v'nichtav al yodam. Because they were such tzidkanias, so the whole parsha of Yerusha is only because of them. Because they were tzidkanias. So I ask you, what happens if you have 1 son and 5 daughters? You know what happens? Midyoraisa, only the son Yarshins. Is that what you want? What about your daughters? How many daughters are so loyal to the parents that for the last 5 years, they're the only one that's taken care of? And you're going to set them out of the Yerusha? Because in the Torah it says that only the son Yarshins? Many people want to get around that, and there is a way to get around that. The best way is to give a gift while you're alive. Now, I know many people can't do that, but that's wrong. Be bold. Give the children while they're alive. I know somebody that's very close to me that many years bought an extra house for an investment. And recently he sold it and divided the money among all his children and grandchildren. You know why he told me? He said, I want to see my kids smile. I have to wait till after I'm dead that they all want to, share how much money Tati had? Like this, I can see that. I don't need the money. I'm older. I'm managing on what we have. If you have a house, sell it now. And you know something? You don't even have to give. Okay, what that person did, he gave each kid the same. But you don't have to do that. If there's a child that has a certain financial crisis, you could give more. The other kids don't have to know about it when you do it b'chayav. If you write it in the will, everybody's going to see. There'll be arguments. You know how many arguments there are because of money? The Gemara tells us it's a medish in Kehelas. The whole world says the expression, but this is not what it says. Mishayesh lemona roitza masayim. But anybody who has 100 wants 200. There's no person that leaves this world with a desire for money that he's satisfied with. He wants 200. I can tell you, I know families, millionaires, mamish. There's so much money they don't even know what to do with it. And the husband died. But he obviously was not smart enough to write a will. So now his son is arguing with the mother. They both have millions, but he's not satisfied. What did he do? That Russia. He went to Eretz Yisrael and he changed the locks on the apartment in Eretz Yisrael so his mother shouldn't be able to get in. This guy could buy the whole block in Eretz Yisrael. No, he's got to have every little thing. The father should have written a will based on halacha, based on legalities, give it to a rav, put it in escrow, and there'll be no shilas. But nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to write about what's going to happen. I know another family, this is awful. Brothers and sisters, when parents don't write out their heirlooms, the things that they have in their house that the kids might want, how can I write it? How can I choose? They'll be so angry. You know what's going to happen? They'll be 10 times angrier when they don't choose. So listen to this. This son who claimed, he's a Irish. So he took his mother's leichter, the candelabra. His wife is not using it. She's not benching licht on her mother-in-law's leichter, right? And the sisters are crying. Why did you take it? What are you doing with it? It's in a closet. We would use it. It's mommy's. How could you take it from us? I'm the Irish. You're a Irish, but you're a Russia. Because there's no reason a guy should do that. But how are you going to argue with them? Because the mother didn't want to write it out. And that's silly. It's a mistake. You have to be bigger than that. That's what we're talking about, the value of life. You want to make sure there's no arguments? Do it now. Write out, and again, the best thing, and of course, halacha, if you want that the kids don't get equally, but they get different things, you could write it out, and you know something? You write it in such a way that it becomes a gift an hour before a person passes on. That's what Rabbi Zon, Rabbi Schoenfeld, Rabbi Scheinfeld, all the tzaddikim here, they can tell you how to do this. That's what these wills are. That's what halachic will is. You have the options. There are options out there. And that's why this meeting is so important. Because this saves machlokes, bittere machlokes and families. But you got to be bold enough. You have to be able to do it. Step forward and write out. And if you have to make a decision to give more to one, you can't do it afterwards, because then there'll be such bitter arguments. Everybody will know. Like this, you can do it in advance, and nobody knows. Two more things, and then we'll end with a fabulous story. One of the things that a person, all of us should do, and this is what I did, I'm telling it to you straight, I know it's going all around the world. Of course I wrote a will. And when you can give tzedakah from your money, now of course you don't know what you're going to own, so you could write, out of this amount of money, this percent should go to this tzedakah, this percent should go to this tzedakah. And of course, as you get older and you get involved in different tzedakahs, so every 3 or 4 years you look it over, you could change it. Why not? You know where it is. The lawyer has it, the Rav has it, or whatever. You could change it. And I'll tell you what it says in Shulchan Aruch. Al Yerdei Reish Mem Tes Aleph. Al Yivazveis Adam Yosem Achaymish. While you're alive, don't spend more than a fifth of your money for tzedakah. Shlo Yitzarech Labriyos. You're going to wipe out all your expenses, and all your money, rather. And you won't have food for expenses. You won't have money for food and all the things that you need. You know, things change. So don't give more than a fifth. However, V'davka, Kol Yemei Chayav, that's when a guy's alive. Aval B'shas Misasai. If you want to give any amount that you want to give, you could give. You can't let your children be a boss over you. You love certain organizations, your heart goes out to them. Write it. You can give any amount you want. That's your Elam Abba. You're giving tzedakah. You don't have to give just a fifth. You can give whatever you want. I'm not saying what you should do, but it's your decision, not your kid's decision. And that's what a person should do. And you update it every 3 or 4 years according to the various tzedakahs that you should give. I want to tell you another thing that I think we should start a new thing in Klal Yisrael. And that is, I believe every parent should make a video while they're well and while they look good. And make a video, and I would call it the video of parting perspectives. Wouldn't it be great if you could listen now to your mother or to your father what they would want, what they would have wanted that you should do in your life? Now, as we get older, our parents become smarter. You know, when we're young, we think we're smarter than the parents. But as we get older, we realize how smart they were. Imagine if I could have my father, and I could see him on a video, what he would have wanted from me, what he expected from me, what he felt my potential was. I'd give anything for that. It's very hard for parents to do it. So I have a son-in-law, Hananya Kramer, from Kol Ram Multimedia, a brilliant videographer. He told me that my daughter, Fegi, has a friend, I don't want to mention the name because I didn't get their permission. She was very, very sick. She was dying. And my daughter suggested to her, she said, why don't you make a recording for your children? And I know it's difficult, but could you imagine how they will treasure it forever? It's not going to be easy to watch, but one day they will watch it. And they went to the town, it was out of town, and this woman was ready, Nebuch, very sick, but that day she looked great. My son-in-law set up a camera, and he left the video, and he left the room. And of course, my daughter also left the room. And she said what she wanted to say. For 45 minutes, she spoke to her children. And after she passed away, her husband told my son-in-law, he couldn't watch it. For 3 months, he couldn't even look at it. He didn't want to look at it. It was very painful, which I understand. But today, 2 years later, that's all they're looking at. There's mommy. Look what she wanted from us. She's like talking from Shemayim. What a beautiful idea. Again, it's not an easy thing to do. And I haven't done it yet, but now that I thought of it, maybe I will. A video of parting perspectives. And all of us would want to know what our parents would want from us. So I just want to end with this great story. It's one of the greatest stories of life you'll ever hear. I heard this from Dr. David Pelkowitz. He told a story about two young people, young men and young women, both had been counselors in Camp Simcha, Chai Lifeline. Victims, and now both of them were in remission. And they decided that they want to get engaged and want to get married. And people said to them, what are you, crazy? How could you want to get married? You know, you never know when it could come back. What's the future that, you know, kids are going to be without both parents? Both of them had cancer. And other people said, mind your own business. These couple, they can do whatever they want. Let them live happily if they can. And this fellow got up and he told this story at a certain convention where Dr. Pelkowitz was there. And he said, we got engaged. And he said that what happened was that he comes from Australia, and 2 or 3 weeks before the chasana, he went to Australia to finish up everything that he had there. And he was going to come back. He saw his kala before he left. But Rahman al-Islan, he didn't even realize that as he was getting on the plane, she took a terrible, terrible turn for the worse, and she was rushed to the emergency room and rushed to the hospital. And her parents called Qantas Airlines, that's on the way to Australia. He was already past Los Angeles, on the way to Australia. That the second he gets off the plane, he's got to call back. He's got to come right back if he wants to see her before she dies, because she's on the last breaths of life. Imagine the poor guy. I don't know if you ever traveled to Australia. It's exhausting. You go to Los Angeles, then from there another 13 hours to Australia. He gets off the plane. There's 5 officials waiting for him. And they say to him, you got to call. You got to call home right away. And he calls and they tell him, you got to come back. You can't even go to your house in Australia. You got to get back as fast as you can. And he's going crazy. It's such an exhausting trip. And now he's got to go back, and he gets on the plane and he's going to Los Angeles. Then again, another 6 hours back to New York. And he comes into the hospital and he takes a look at his wife. He doesn't recognize her. She's so pale. She's so frail. She's dying. He can't believe it. What happened in less than a week? And he tries to say a few words to her. And he goes into the other room to daven Shachris. He hadn't daven Shachris yet. And he's davening Shemoneh Esrei. And he comes to that perik, to that part of Shemoneh Esrei, Sim Shalem. And he says these words. Ki ba'or panecha nasata lanu. Hashem, with the light of your face, you gave us Toras Chaim v'Yavas Chesed. And he says, Hashem, you have so much light in your face. You have that or panecha. Take some of that light and give it to my kala. You have so much light. Give it to my kala. I wanted to live. I wanted to build a family. And he's crying. He can't stop crying. And he's saying these words over again. Give your panecha nasata lanu, Hashem. Please, with the light of your face, give it to my kala. And he finishes davening and he comes back into the room. He doesn't recognize him. It's not the same person. She's alive. She's got a rosy face. Like, how did this happen? And then he calls up his 2 children. And he says, Rabbi Paysach, look at these children. My wife healed. We're happily married. And these are my children. Hashem could do anything. That's the Or Panecha. And you know something that occurred to me? Every morning we say, V'hoer eineinu b'sar esecha. Hoer, light, is not only light in the light of a face, but V'hoer means to enlighten us, to give us the wisdom. And that's the bracha that we give to all of us here today and all of us around the world that will be listening. Let us be enlightened. Let us, Hashem, give us the wisdom to make the right decisions in the right time. To understand that great people like Rabbi Zon, great people like the NASC organization are worried for the future of our families. There should be no machlokes. There should be direction. There should be Rabbanim, Heilige Rabbanim that could advise us. They are the ones that they can guide us. That's the purpose of today. Hashem should bench all of us, that we should be zeicha, that Mashiach should come where you shouldn't have to do all these things. But we all know, to the other guy, you're the other guy. And we never know what could happen. And we have to be prepared. Ashrei Adam Mefachat Tamid. We thank Rabbi Schoenfeld. We thank Rabbi Zon. We thank all those that had the foresight to plan this wonderful day so that all of us should be able to live comfortably with health care and in an orderly fashion to transmit to the future generations our resources with pride and with joy and simcha, and that should be the modus vivendi of all of us for the rest of our lives. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for listening.